Back then when I was learning to code in 2020, locked in a one-bedroom apartment all by myself, because 19-year-old me saw no future in Spain after leaving Venezuela and thought that it was a good idea to move to Berlin just before COVID happened. I was not only overwhelmed by COVID, but I just didn't know where to focus to learn how to code. You have resources like Codecademy or Free Code Camp that they offer a lot of free things, but you just don't know what to focus on, front-end, back-end, and somehow you can do both with Python and JavaScript. Fast forward to 2024 when I won a best product idea with a friend of mine when we designed a mobile application only using Figma since neither of us knew how to code a mobile application. And I ended up pitching that idea from a tattoo studio because I booked a tattoo and that was the same day that I had to do the pitch for the application. After winning, not only did I move from AI data science to software engineering, but I also decided to take this idea to a market and I just didn't know what framework to use. Should I choose Swift and do only iOS? Should I choose Kotlin since Android devices are in the rise? Should I choose Flutter since it's backed by Google? Or should I choose React Native that is backed by Facebook? But I'm telling you on this video the top 5 reasons on why I think React Native is one of the best frameworks that a junior developer can learn. If you're new here, my name is Daniel, I'm a software engineering student and an indie hacker trying to make it. If you've never worked with React, going for React Native or React, it's probably going to increase your livelihoods of getting higher or at least to be more up to date with what technologies are coming out in the market. If you've been following the tech drama or anything tech related for at least a few months, you know that front end moves quite fast. It's actually overwhelming how fast it moves. But one of the things that benefited my decision of going for React Native is that if I needed to do something in web development, I was going to be able to understand much better what was going on web development, because React and React Native, yeah, they're not the same, but they are more similar than they are different. If I have to learn how to use hooks, it's much easier for me to understand their usage both in mobile and web development than to completely learn a whole different framework for web development and another one for mobile development. Every time that I have to do a landing page for one of my mobile applications, I can just use Vite and React TypeScript and use AI for creating a basic landing page for my mobile application. Not only that, I'm using that so I can create my first portfolio website. There's something about seeing your name on the App Store that just makes it cooler for you to have your own application in your phone. I don't know what it is. Maybe this is a sign that I was supposed to be a mobile developer more than anything else, but the idea of having an application that I completely developed from scratch, it's something that I found incredibly rewarding because I feel that I can take the application everywhere and it's not something that happens with the websites. I think that web development has a much higher degree of learning curve because there's a lot of technologies and a lot of security things that you need to understand before you launch a website where you can handle users and things like that, that they seem quite simple, but once that you get into the ingrained on how web development works, you know how crucial it is to protect your users' data. Of course, you can use stuff like SUPA-based authentication and things like that, but even so, I feel much more secure deploying things to the App Store than deploying things to the internet, if that makes sense. The relationship between React Native and Expo is something that to this day I don't understand. I just don't understand this front-end development environment where everything needs to be a framework on top of a framework on top of a framework. In the beginning, I was reading a lot of the documentation for React Native, but then I saw that they pretty much deprecated the documentation from React Native and now you have to follow everything that Expo said and they just stopped updating things at React Native or somewhere along those lines. I don't really understand too well the difference between those two technologies, but I know that Expo is pretty much a very opinionated wrapper on a lot of the bigger libraries from React Native from a few years ago. So for example, I'm a big advocate of using React Native navigation instead of Expo router because React Native navigation gives you a lot more things and a lot more customizations than Expo router does. And I don't see the benefit of having file-based routing on mobile applications. I just don't see the point of it. Same thing happened when I was building LeapVault and I needed to use Expo Camera. Why would I use Expo Camera when I can use React Native Vision Camera, adjust the usage of all of these fancy things that iPhone cameras have that I don't really need, make the camera faster so the users can open the application faster, and I don't really have all of this fluff that it's easy to use but it's costing me customization into my application. It's completely up to you, but it can also be a really great tool if you need to deploy something really fast. If you get practice with how Expo works and you know how the API works and you know how all of these things work, you can easily build an application only using Expo tools in less than an afternoon. That's a great tool to have if your focus is to build an MVP as fast as possible that is cross-platform. This is going to be controversial and I think that this is a blessing and a curse because I think it's the best and the worst thing that AI has. I'm hoping you've been using AI at this point because I'm assuming that unless you live under a rock, you've been using Claude, ChatGPT, or at least Gemini, something like that, because otherwise you pretty much can't keep up with tech anymore. And as you can see, they are getting better increasingly every few months or every couple of years on writing really good code. Of course, you can't say that there's always going to be be something that can be improved on like any other developer. The code is never going to be perfect, and I'm sure that someone with 20 years of experience on something, they're gonna have a stroke reading that code, but I don't have 20 years of experience and I just want to deploy applications relatively quickly while at the same time I'm learning how to do it. And one of the blessings in a course about AI is that they always say that you're right. No matter what you ask to AI or what you prompt, they're always going to tell you that something is possible. Now this is a double-edged sword because it can create false expectations on how fast you can develop things, but at the same time it can also make you delusional on how big your ideas can be. More than once has happened to me that I think that something is really easy to do. I think it's gonna take me an afternoon to do it. I prompt it to AI and then it takes me weeks to actually finish that idea, but I end up becoming a much better developer after I finish that. Now you might be wondering, why is this particularly attached to React Native? And it's because the advantage that I mentioned on the point number 1, that React and React Native are going to be more similar than they are different, it teaches you how to handle different libraries in the same time that you are working with mobile applications and how you are working with web development. Which takes me to my last point. Some of the biggest libraries will share how they are used between React and React Native. Two big examples of these are Tanstack Query and Sustan. When my friend and I were trying to code Habify using Firebase and we were trying to fetch the data and the context of the user into our application, it was an absolute nightmare. Honestly, it was so difficult and we couldn't understand why it was so hard. And we had to, I was struggling to understand why we were facing this amount of effort in order for us to simply fetch data from the database. Because the more junior you are, the more unrealistic you are to the expectations on how easy or hard things are. Like, how hard can it be to just grab some information from the database? That's supposed to be easy, right? We haven't even shipped the application. But no, obviously it wasn't like that. But then I thought, I can't be the same one or the only one in the world having the same issue, and I'm sure that there's someone smarter than me that created a better solution. So that's when I went on Reddit and I found a random Reddit post that it was mentioning React Query. And then I found out React Query and everything was literally 5 lines of code, and it was thinking about edge cases that we haven't even considered, because obviously we're just a bunch of junior developers that will never launch a proper application, and the person that developed this is one of the most respected developers in the last few years. But now I have experience with React Query, and not only that, I can use it if I'm doing a project with web development or with mobile development. Now don't get me wrong, and I'm not trying to be arrogant here. I'm sure that there's a lot of things that I haven't taken into consideration because I haven't done a project properly with web development, but it's definitely going to be faster for me to implement and read the documentation adapted to web development than if I've never used React Query and I have no idea what I'm doing. And don't get me wrong, it's not that I'm a senior developer despite on how fucking bald my head is. I'm just a junior developer trying to come back to university when I'm 27 years old, and I'm 1 year away of finishing my degree. And despite that I haven't fulfilled my stereotypical dream of going to a yacht in the Caribbean and having 10 hot girls and being at the beach and doing nothing and making millions of dollars and just living the Latin American version of fucking Wolf of Wall Street, I have built a few applications and I have one making money. It's 10 quid a month, but that's at least some money. That's way more than what a lot of uni students have to say. And I know, and I'm a victim of this, that biases you, the internet, into thinking that everyone is always making millions around you, but in reality, by me just shipping an application and it's making some amount of money, it's way better than 99% of people. So I just have to keep going, and this is hopefully why you're following this channel. If you like this video, please make sure to drop a like and subscribe to my channel if you want to follow along my journey. See you on the next video. Bye bye.